we're diving into a Dynasty player price check, and this is for your 2024 Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues. One quarterback. Hey, we don't league shame here. Don't league shame one quarterback. Don't hate. Still out there. I'm in a couple. Nate, are you in a few one quarterback leagues?
I'm in a couple of one quarterbacks. I enjoy the one quarterbacks.
too.
So many of my leagues are super flex at this point and tight end premium that the one quarterback leagues, I have like 2 or 3 of them. I can't remember exactly. And I enjoy the difference that happens in that league.
Yeah, me too. It's just, it kind of changes how you view everything because you're so used to the super flex value. So I like doing this, and this is a good exercise for us to do. So let's start with our first player here. Nate, player 1, Tennessee Titans running back Tyjae Spears. There's been a lot of buzz around him. His given cost, and this is just Bob coming up with the cost. He tries to be as accurate as he can. So
there's a lot of market research.
But the cost that we came up with was the 2024 111.
Yeah, I think in a one quarterback league, you can pick up a running back at the 111 this year. You might be able to pick up a Jonathan Brooks, and that straight up, I might lead Brooks, but most other running backs, I'm going to lean Spears here. I think this is a fair deal. I think it actually might even be lower than what the cost should be, especially in one quarterback, because I might be willing to pay up to like the 1.9 for Tyjae Spears, who I do think has a lot of viability next year in fantasy football because of his receiving upside. He had 52 receptions, 385 yards, and only 1 touchdown last year, which equaled 96.5 fantasy points. That's how many fantasy points Kenneth Gainwell scored and Rico Dowdle scored this year. That's just his receiving work. He had 100 carries on top of that in 2023. I think that could probably double. James Cook, who we saw do quite well for the Bills this year, in his rookie season, he only had 89 rushes. This year, he had 237 rushes. So I think there's not a big jump for Tyjae Spears to go from 100 to 200 as the starting running back for that team, possibly even more. So you put 200 carries on top of, at minimum, you would think that receiving production, because that was his rookie year production. It obviously grew throughout the year. Whole new offense there. We got the Bengals head coach, the Bengals offensive coordinator coming in there as the head coach. We're going to see more passing of the ball. I think we're going to see, Tyjae Spears involved in that game. So I'm about Tyjae Spears for the 111. Like I said, I'd probably pay up to the 109 for him.
And I think this is why I always say mock drafts are so important. And because especially this time of year when you're trying to make these moves and say, oh, do I want to move this pick? Well, who could that pick be? What player would it be? And I understand, maybe sometimes like right now on Keep Trade Cut, just looking at his value, I think his value is lower in a one quarterback league than his super flex league, surprisingly. He's valued around, and tell me if you would take Tyjae Spears. I know it's one quarterback, but would you take him or Jordan Love?
It's obviously going to really depend on team build, but in a vacuum, I'm probably taking Tyjae Spears. I like Jordan Love. I think he's going to be a really good fantasy quarterback, but in one quarterback, I'm really looking for that Konami code quarterback.
Okay. And just looking, he is closely valued to a late 2024 first, a mid 26 first, and a late 25 first. So we can see what the value range is right now. Also valued very close to a guy like Javonte Williams. I think right now I would also rather roll the dice on Tyjae Spears.
Yeah, I would as well. And I think with the fact that he's got those scary knees, we hear he doesn't really have any ACLs left. I'm only looking at running backs in a 2 to 3 year window anyway, so he's probably okay. But if he hits that, if that becomes a factor, he could fall off the cliff, really, really quick. So if I'm paying, the 111, the 110, the 109 even, I probably want something back, just to give me a little bit of insurance in case this doesn't work out. Whether that's a late second, a 3rd round pick, or something like that. I probably just want something just as some insurance for taking on someone with sketchy knees.
Let's move on to our next player, Nate, and that is Seattle Seahawks wide receiver Jaxon Smith-Njigba. So the given cost here is the 2024 105 and a 2025 second. And Nate, we both think, again, that this is fair value. And I think it's important, instead of just saying it's always higher or lower, fair is always a good thing to throw in there as well. Just like when we do buy, sell, hold, we add a void in there as well. Just like to kind of keep all of our options open. I do have some other players that I might want to get for this price.
Okay.
I'll tell you what.
I'm in on JSN still. I'm not worried about his rookie year production. I thought that was still plenty for me. Obviously not matching the high levels we had for him pre-draft, but once we knew his landing spot, I think his numbers kind of came out to be what I expected this year. And with the talent that he has and the fact that the Tyler Lockett out is finally here, Mike. We've been waiting for it for a year now. Maybe some people have been waiting longer if they were really big DK Metcalf fans, but The potential out is now here with Tyler Lockett. If they are to do a post-June 1st release or trade, which of course they can do either of those things before June 1st and then just book it as after June 1st, they can save themselves nearly $18 million next year in cap. That's a lot of reasons to release or trade Tyler Lockett.
Especially when reasons why.
That is 18 million reasons why, especially when you just invested a first-round pick in what I'm assuming you probably thought was a top tier prospect at the wide receiver position.
We all think that he still is. I don't think there's anybody saying that he's not at this point.
No, if you watch JSN, obviously the stats, the box score doesn't show up as an elite wide receiver. But if you watched him this year, some of the catches that he made down the sideline, down the field, this guy has a ton of talent. He's just waiting to explode. Just needs the people in front of him to move so that he can get in there. And I think I've talked about this before, probably a month or two before, that if Tyler Lockett moves on, I think JSN steps in as the wide receiver one from a target perspective and from a reception perspective. I would still expect DK Metcalf to have more yards and more touchdowns, but I think what they did this year was they really used DK Metcalf down the field a lot more. Now, obviously, we have a new coaching staff in there, so we'll see. But DK Metcalf, he really did well this year. He had really good efficiency numbers, put up good numbers as a down the field threat. They weren't using him as close to the line of scrimmage. That was kind of more Tyler Lockett's role. And JSN can obviously step into that role, kind of be that starting slot receiver who they rely on to move the chains. And DK can be that big alpha wide receiver who can make the big plays when they need him to. So I think there's plenty of room for the both of them. I think Geno's still a good quarterback there. They might be looking at quarterback of the future this year. They probably should. I don't mind Michael Penix there if he's available in the second round, to be honest.
Interesting. I will tell you, I do think that this price is fair. There might be some other players I'm looking for at this cost, though, if I was looking to buy.
Yeah.
Let's say I had this pick package, I would look to buy maybe somebody like Brock Bowers, could very well be there. Trey McBride, value is close to that as well. And if you need a running back, Travis Etienne, you could get probably for even a little bit less than this package right now. Just a couple guys that I would be looking for. But I do still think this is fair value. This is not a tight end premium. Just want to throw that out there, this value. But Tyjae Hockenson of the Minnesota Vikings and his given cost is the 107 and a 25 third. Forgive me. So kind of close to what we were looking for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. A couple picks down. Maybe he's getting that injury bump down, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
Look, once again, you and I, Bob's coming up with some really good values because we think it's fair.
It is. Yeah, I think this is really fair. I think in a tight end premium, I'd be looking for, like the 104, 105 probably. Because at the 104, you get to Brock Bowers territory. I actually have them kind of similar, ranked. In a startup, I'm probably picking. Actually, I don't even know, man. Coming off the injury, I love Brock Bowers. We'll see what his landing spot looks like. But TJ Hockenson with the injury, with the fact that I've talked about this a lot over the last couple of weeks, that there's a tight end landscape once again, and now just because of that, there's more depth of the position. Does not mean that TJ Hockenson is that much undervalued or less valued because he's a top 3 tight end when he's on the field. We know that. Like, he is a stud when he's on the field. You don't have many guys that get the volume he does at tight end. Obviously, I love TJ Hockenson, but we're putting the third on here. I think like the value is like around the 106 or the 107 and a third. I'm fine with that either way. I think he's really good. And if you need a starting tight end, I don't mind moving this pick because otherwise you're starting to get into that next tier on the board where you can kind of reach into whatever position you want. Probably picking up wide receiver still, but maybe you're starting to look at running backs. You can solidify your tight end position. Hockenson's still young. He's not into his 30s yet. So
yeah,
I'm cool with this.
And I do think this is a good price for a starting tight end. He could be sidelined to start the season, most likely will be.
Yeah, and just to clarify, he's 26 and a half, Mike.
Okay, so he's still young.
He's still young.
Now, if I can get slightly younger and healthier, I would do that at this value. Guys like Trey McBride's going to be in the same range. Brock Bowers likely gone at this point. Dalton Kincaid is another guy I'd be looking at as well with that package. But I love the value here for Hockenson. I have no problems with it at all. Let's talk about a maligned player here, Nate. This value, it's interesting right now. And that is Pittsburgh Steelers running back Najee Harris. That given cost is the 2024 203. Seems a bit low for a starting running back in the NFL, especially a guy who's really consistent, over 1,000.
Some people are going to say that he's in a committee with Jalen Warren. Some people will argue.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a bad argument either. I mean, obviously, Warren had the vast majority of receiving work at the end of the year.
I'm just curious to see, they go from Matt Canada to Arthur Smith, and
who we've seen mess us up with the running back position before.
My only thought is maybe he's a better offensive coordinator than he is.
I think so.
But you said fair, maybe lower, and I said that I feel that this value is lower. And the reason I said lower, it's a one quarterback league. You know what I mean? Starting running back, I do think he should go back to being the primary ball carrier. We did say that last year too. But for me, I think his value would be in the range of the 111 to 201.
Yeah, I think the 201, the 203 is kind of my like early second. I'm not willing to pay a first for Najee. You know, he's going to be 26 to start the season next year. I don't know what it's really going to look like for him after next year. You know, Najee being next season 26. I still love Najee. He's going to get the volume. I think his efficiency is not as bad as people make it out to be because that entire Steelers offense has been inefficient for the last 3 years. I do think Arthur Brown's actually an upgrade for the Steelers offensively. I know we love to hate him in the fantasy community, but he pulled together a decent Falcons team this year out of, you know, I know we think that he underperformed with the weapons he had, but he still was right there on the playoff door. He had a really good couple seasons for the Tennessee Titans. You know, obviously Derrick Henry was there and he's a monster himself, but he knew to feed him the ball. And we saw what he did with Derrick Henry. We might see similar, but not as explosive things with Najee Harris. But I'm just worried about that receiving work, which I think Jalen Warren's going to continue to get. So that's why I'm kind of sticking here at the 203, maybe up to the 201 if I really need a starting running back and I'm a competitive team. But at that point, I can start re-rolling the dice for another running back. You know, I don't expect a guy like Jonathan Brooks to be there. I've talked about it a good bit. But maybe a guy like Marshawn Lloyd could be there.
Okay.
So Braylon Allen might be there.
In a one quarterback league, Bucky Irving's probably gone, I would assume. Jonathan Brooks should be long gone. Let's move on to the next one. Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver Arthur Juan Brown Jr., also known as A.J. Brown. The given cost, look, I like the guy, but the 2024 101.
Whew.
That's a bit high for me, and I love A.J. Brown, not just because I'm an Eagles fan. I liked A.J. Brown coming out of Ole Miss. I liked him when he was a Tennessee Titan. Love him now. But I think I'm not comfortable paying this for A.J. Brown. And another guy who, you know, when people are rebuilding or they want to, when they're competing, I should say, and they want to go for the aging veteran, the Devontae Adams of the world, because like he's going to put me over the top. And I understand, you know, you're selling it all to win it. I try to lean people towards guys like this. Like, hey, if you're going to spend the money, at least get maximum value out of it. Yeah. If you don't win it, he's still young enough, or you could flip around and get a good ROI. I would sell for the 101, honestly. If I have A.J. Brown and you come at me and you're like, I will give you the 101 for him, I'm going to be like, yeah, of course, let's do that. But I think for me, the 103 to 105, I think is my range for A.J. Brown, not the 101.
Yeah, you're kind of low on A.J. Brown then, I think. Because I think this comes down in one way to Marvin Harrison Jr. versus A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
You know, if we really want to simplify it, that's what we can do. And look, A.J. Brown, you know, bringing up age again, he's going to be 27 going into next season, which is not old for wide receivers. He's actually going into his prime, you could say.
Right.
You know, the next 3 years, I expect him to be a top 12 wide receiver, top 15-ish, you know, if he's missing some games or not doing so well, the Eagles offense isn't looking too great. But I do expect him to be keep lowering the bar. A top 20 wide receiver the next 3 years.
Just got Kellen Moore
confident in there. Come on, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. And in Dynasty, unless you somehow lucked into the 101 as a very competitive team, it's the 101 here in like every single instance. I feel that confident about Marvin Harrison Jr. And what I would want to do if this is the cost for A.J. Brown, I would rather make the cost like a 102. And if I need to add like a third on top of that, that's fine with me. I don't mind adding a third or a second on top of Malik Neighbors or Romo and Dunze to go get A.J. Brown. I know a lot of people want to put Neighbors in the same category as Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not quite there. So, you know, from that second tier of wide receivers, I'm willing to move those guys for A.J. Brown and get someone who I know is a stud. But when it comes to Marvin Harrison Jr., like I said, if you're a competitive team, I get the lateral move. I think it could be a very productive move for you. But if you're like in any other situation, just give me Marvin Harrison Jr. Keep it simple.
You're over here acting like the guy's Drake London or something. This one gave me fits.
This is the one where I don't think Bob came up with this price. I think he found somewhere and just wanted to give us a little shock.
He had to have, because I don't think he would pay this. I don't think he would have paid this last year either. And that is Los Angeles Chargers / soon-to-be free agent running back Austin Ekeler. And his given cost is a 2024 110.
How are you going to pay a first round for Austin Ekeler? I don't know who's paying the first for Austin Ekeler, but anyone who's doing that, you better go sell him Austin Ekeler any chance you get. Because, look, Mike, I'm not paying anything more than a late second, early third for Austin Ekeler right now. And I do actually think that he's going to come back on a different team and have a decent receiving role. But at this point of the offseason, no. I'm not paying a first round for Austin Ekeler. I'm not paying an early second. I'm not paying a mid-second unless I'm getting another throw-in player that I like with potential on top of it. Sorry, Austin Ekeler, man, he hit a cliff this year. Hit a cliff. And you could see it. It was bad.
No, it was – I mean, for me, this value is way high. I'm only paying like an early to mid-third.
Yeah, I understand.
Then, even then –
I don't feel great about it.
I think at this point, I could get a guy. We talked about Tyjae Spears before, maybe even a Michael Pittman or Brandon Ayuk. Might have to add a little bit more, but I would happily add a little bit more to get those players than Austin Ekeler, man. I mean, maybe I would consider if I could get maybe Alvin Kamara for the 110.
Man,
more relevant at least.
I understand.
It's hard.
You're just catching a falling knife with these running backs. I mean, Austin Ekeler's going to be 29 going into next season. I think Kamara's probably about the same. Austin Ekeler, 110. We talked about Tyjae Spears for the 111 earlier. Austin Ekeler only caught 51 balls this year. I know he missed some games, but that's essentially the same thing that Tyjae Spears did this year as a rookie.
Let me throw.
You got guys falling two different directions.
Let me throw these two out at you then. Saquon, Josh Jacobs, both going to be free agents.
Both younger than Ekeler and Kamara, though, to be fair.
That is true. That is true. Would you pay the 110 for either of those guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Would you?
Because
how would you?
Competitive running backs who I think will still be productive for me for the next 2 to 3 years. Now, I don't know if in 3 years they're going to be RB1s.
Wow.
I doubt that, just because of the longevity of the position, as good as both those guys are. But I would think that this year they'll still probably be top 12, top 15 running backs because of their ability. And if they get volume, I know they're older, but if they get volume, and they stay healthy, there's RB1 potential overall for both of those guys still.